Welcome to my tutorial for Tank Force, and this one took about 4 hours and 33 minutes to beat. And this is the Arcade Archives version for the Switch. So it's a Switch port of the arcade game, but it's pretty much identical to the arcade version as far as I can tell. So I was playing it through here. I did beat the game. So I beat the game in two-player mode for arcade on MAME, and that's pretty damn easy with 2 players, and it's probably even easier with 4 players, even though it does scale up the amount of enemies. If you are playing with more players, it seems to put more enemies on screen. But it's easier because you can just kind of join back in if you pump coins in without any real penalties, unless all the players on screen die at the same exact time, or if your base gets destroyed. If you're not protecting that, then all the players will have to restart the stage. So that's the only way you can really lose in multiplayer. So if you want to have more of a fun time and kind of cruise through it a little bit more, try playing it on 2 players or above. I did try playing the game in 4-player mode, but it didn't fucking work well on MAME. I kept having all kinds of issues where certain players couldn't put in credits to come in, and it was just all fucked up. So I said, fuck it. I tried the 2-player version, and I got 2 players to work. So I went through it. On MAME, I went through it in multiplayer, 2-player mode, because I figured, fuck it, I'm working on my solo run on the Switch version already anyway. So I'll just do this version solo, and, for MAME, I don't really want to beat the whole fucking game again in solo mode. It's a lot of work, so I figured, fuck it, let me just get it on the kill list and, do a little multiplayer playthrough for that version. So I got that up on the channel as well. So the way this game works is you have your base, which is that eagle with the walls around it on the bottom of the screen. You want to protect that. If that gets destroyed, you automatically lose no matter how many lives you have remaining. You automatically lose, and you'll have to restart the stage. You have unlimited continues, but you only have about 3 lives to beat each stage. So if you lose those 3 lives, you're sent back out to the continue screen where you will have to restart the stage you last got to. And you'll get your 3 lives back again to try again. And when you do lose one of those lives, obviously, you will respawn right where you died. But you will lose your power-ups if you collected any. Now, when it does come down to protecting the base, the way it works is the base has 3 walls, I guess, because it doesn't have a bottom wall. But it has 3 walls protecting the eagle in the middle. When one of the walls gets fully destroyed, it only takes about 1 shot or so from the enemy to destroy the eagle, which will destroy your base. So in later stages, it can be a fucking bitch to try to protect the base because it can get annihilated like really fucking quick. It can get destroyed in a few shots in some cases, like maybe 2 shots, because 1 shot to destroy the wall and 1 shot to kill the eagle and the more powerful enemies. But something like that anyway. Now this is an airstrike. If you get this airstrike, it's great because it clears all the enemies on screen. It is one of the best power-ups in some ways, but in other ways it's not that great because you don't often get it during the harder waves of enemies where you would actually really need it. So, it seems great, but a lot of times I don't get it when I really need it. And the way this game works, there's a little bit more to the game. Like I said, you got to protect your base. If your base gets destroyed, it's a game over, but there's a little bit more to the game. The second part of clearing a stage is you have to destroy all the enemies on a stage. So not only do you have to protect your base, you have to destroy all the enemies on a particular stage, which can be tough to do solo. The game really does feel like it was designed for multiplayer mainly because it gets pretty wild on some of these stages solo. But, you have to try to manage all that shit. You can't really drive away from your base for too long in the harder stages because the enemies will just destroy it. So you got to protect your base all while you're trying to kill every enemy on screen. And the way it works with the enemies is they don't all appear on screen at once. You basically got to take them out in waves. So you're going to have to clear a bunch of enemies, and the more enemies you clear, new enemies are going to keep spawning in. Now, when a new enemy spawns into the screen, it is invincible. Or actually, it doesn't hurt you for a short period of time, but you can spawn kill it. If you're sitting right on its spawn, you can be ready to kill them if you know when they're going to spawn in. So that is something you can do. It is a strategy. But a lot of times you don't want to sit on the spawn because there's other shit going on. You got to make sure you're protecting your base too. So you really got to kind of plan everything out. There is, I believe, about 36 or 37 stages. So there hasn't been anything too hard to detail yet. There'll be much harder stages to go into more details about. There is bosses every so often. So those are the basics. Usually when you fire a bullet out of your tank, you can't fire the next bullet until that bullet connects with something. So you only have one bullet on screen if you're doing a long shot with your tank. So you got to wait for it to connect to something. But if you are shooting at things that are close, you can kind of get a rapid fire in. So because the bullet, as soon as the bullet makes contact with something, you can fire it again. It's kind of like, I think Space Invaders was like that. It's a little bit like that. So some tanks are armored and will take 2 hits. So there's different enemy types. The armored tanks are one of the bigger pains in the ass because, later on you'll get swarmed by them, and each one takes 2 hits. And if you don't have any power-ups, you're going to have to shoot them with your pea shooter, which will take 2 shots for each one. So it's not the most convenient. The tank is kind of slow and sluggish. So you got to get used to the way the enemy behavior works. But a lot of the bosses, I found safe spots and tricks where you could pull complete bullshit. Like here, you see me sitting on these edges here. This seems to be a pretty safe spot from what I remember. And I'll just wait it out a lot of times because there's no timer on the stages. The only timer in the game really is, the only time you're pressed for time is if enemies are closing in on your base. So let's say that these bosses destroy those walls completely. Then they're going to start shooting on your base and they can start taking out the wall on your base. So there is a bit of a timer with that on some stages. Now that power-up I just got does 2 things. It looks like a sushi roll. What it does is it gives your base invincibility for a short period of time. But more importantly than that, it actually heals your base fully if your base was damaged. So getting those can be really critical on some stages. But yeah, staying in this area and shooting was pretty damn safe. So that's my recommended strat for that boss. Now the way this is edited is a little bit different than my other edited playthrough where I show my first failed attempt on each new stage. So whenever I failed on a new stage, I show me exhausting all the lives and going back out to the continue screen, right? And I show that once per new stage. I don't show all my failed continues on each stage, just the first one. I wanted to cut it down, but I still show some of the failures so that the transitions are clear. But for this tutorial, it's more of a demonstration version. I just want to show each stage being completed properly by me. So for this, what I'm doing is I'm not showing any of the full wasted sets of lives. I'm only showing the successful attempts on the stages. Now, for some successful attempts, I was doing it on a fresh set of lives, after continuing on the continue screen, starting with no starting power-ups. That was most of the time. But occasionally, I did beat stages back-to-back, a few back-to-back without having to go out to the continue screen. But that was very rare. It happened a little bit near the end of the game, and it happened maybe a little bit in the beginning. But it wasn't a common occurrence. But that's how this is edited. So it's only showing the successful runs of the stages. So you may see lives pop in on the bottom through editing, on some of the stages. That means that I started in on a fresh continue, meaning I lost all my lives and had to continue. So that's really all there is to know about the way this is edited. Now you got these bigger vehicles, which are pretty damn easy, but they can be dangerous. But they are slow, and they have a lot of area to where you can shoot them since they're so big. So I usually like to shoot them from the sides, but I will sometimes take shots at them directly and just move really fast. But you have a lot of opportunities to try to strafe around them and take shots on them. And that's the main key to this game, is really understanding the AI and the way it behaves on all the different enemy types. And then you kind of mix and match that, and you're able to manage everything, But you got to kind of get used to how you can exploit each enemy. So, each enemy kind of has the weakness that most of them are slow. So you can usually shoot them from the sides and try to take them out that way, or the back, or something like that. There's also a lot of choke points. See, that was sloppy, but there's a lot of choke points in this game where one of the great tricks you can do is when you know enemies are traveling down a certain path and they have to pass through a certain area, you just wait, and as they come through, it's like a bottleneck. You just pop them off. And there's certain choke points in stages. Sometimes there'll be a few that I'll utilize in a stage. I'm probably not going to give many stage-specific strategies, but a lot of general strategies, because I don't actually remember everything I did on each stage. But I can say that stage, round 21 was the hardest in the game and took me around 2 hours and 9 minutes. So that's going to be the hardest one probably for most players. I mean, it could be enough for most players to stop playing the game because it's quite difficult. And then the final boss can seem really fucking extreme until I was able to modify a strategy I saw in a video, because videos don't show For these old arcade games, videos often don't show what I show, which is I show completing a lot of these stages with no base power-ups, starting with no power-ups. Because when you continue, you usually don't start with any power-ups in these arcade games. So that is something that I show in my videos. And when you check online for these videos, you're going to see edited runs or cheated runs with save states, various things like that. Or you're going to see people who, once you see the game, are completely powered up and know the game. So you're not going to see something like what I'm doing, which is the first-time player of the game, beating it for the first time. Where I show a fresh start from the stages. So you're going to get to see how you can still beat the stages even without all the power-ups. You may want to use turbo on a controller for this game, but I found it didn't really help that much, but it may give you a little bit of a fire rate increase for closer range enemies, when the bullets connect more frequently. So you can try that. But you're still limited to that one bullet on screen at a time with most weapons until it connects to something. That's why you'll see I don't rapidly fire when my bullets are flying, across the screen, because I can't. It's only one at a time. Certain barriers, obviously, are metal barriers that you can't break, but I think certain power-up, weapon power-ups will let you break steel barriers. Though I didn't have to do that, really, so it's not something I really utilized. See, I'm hanging out at this choke point for this stage in round 7. Now, with that dynamite, you have to be very careful, because if you didn't pay attention to when it was placed, you may not know when it's going to explode, but I think they always explode around the same time after they're placed. At least that's my guess. But you do have to be careful with driving over them. They won't kill you if you drive over them, though. But if they do explode while you're driving over them, it'll kill you. So keep that in mind. It is one-hit deaths, like with most arcade games at this time. But not too bad. You see, I took advantage of that choke point for a while. And I was able to kill most of the enemies just by hanging out in that one area and letting them pass by and just gun them down. And that is a strategy that works for certain stages. So for this stage, we'll see. I think there may be another safe spot I found for this stage, but we'll check it out. So there are some power-ups here. This one is really good. It makes you shoot in every direction, but it's not very powerful. But it can save your ass for certain stages where there's enemies all around you. It's great for that. It got me through stage 21, which was brutal. So now this is kind of a safe spot, I think, if I remember right. Maybe not fully, but this is where I mainly hung out to take this boss out. Try to take out some of the vehicles and shit so they don't destroy the base. But the Jeeps are not usually super dangerous for your base, but they can be if they place explosives right next to the wall. They won't take out your base usually as quickly as a tank will, but they can still kill your base after a few explosions. So I guess I'm going between these 2 points, on the sides of this big wall. This freezes time. It's a great way to take out the boss. You can get a lot of shots in when you freeze the timer. So that's a great power-up as well if you don't have like a powerful shot. Take advantage of that if you can. Whenever you get a strong power-up, for this stage, I recommend taking advantage of your extra firepower to take out the boss. Because the boss can be dangerous. As long as the regular enemies aren't taking over your base, you got to watch out for that. But you will get to start at the beginning of the stage if you fail, so you can keep trying. I usually try to go for the boss each time first. But some stages I had to really vary it up because the enemies were super aggressive, so I had to come back to the boss in spurts sometimes. This starts out a little tricky with these armored tanks rushing the area. But there are a lot of little choke points you can hide behind and just kind of let them pass by and shoot them. The most dangerous position to be in is when you're directly in front of a tank, because then you're going to be trading bullets and you can't really move fast from a stopped position. So now I do think that with certain bullets you can shoot their projectiles and destroy them, but I don't know if you can do that with every gun. I usually didn't even try to do that at all, but I have done it before. Just as a result of trying to kill the things. This stage really isn't too bad if you're aggressive, but you do have to be decent at killing the enemies from the sides, moving around and positioning yourself and getting them from the sides, or they will swarm your base. So this stage starts out with a bunch of these almost like mid-boss type of enemies. But they're really not that hard, even though it looks like it would be difficult. They take a good amount of hits, but they're slow. I like to try to take them out mostly from the sides, because head-on is a little dangerous with that huge shot they fire out. See, like that. You don't really want to do that too often. It's dangerous. But as long as you're aggressive with taking shit out, it's really not too bad. You can kind of hang out at the bottom and let a lot of the enemies come to you and just take them out. And you can, if you're decent enough at it, you can clear them out before they really swarm the base too bad. Even though there is a lot of enemies. There is an enemy indicator on the top right of the screen where it says enemy, and it shows enemy icons. But it's a kind of a shitty indicator of how many enemies are left, because as you see, I've exhausted all the enemy icons. There's none left in the upper right, but there's been enemies coming in for quite a long time with no enemies showing up on that upper right indicator. So I think it does give you an idea of when you're getting near the last waves and shit like that, but it doesn't really indicate how many enemies are left exactly, so it's not that accurate. But you can look at it if you want to see that you're far in a stage. If you've wiped out all the enemies on there, then it's probably, you might be down to the last waves. So in this stage, you get to see these little fucking gas station things, and what's good about those, if you blow them up, you can take out a bunch of enemies when they're grouped next to those gas tanks. See how many enemies I cleared out with that. So that's how you utilize those. So you may want to use those to take out some groups to wipe out enemies faster. But this is more of an easy stage. There's a lot of choke points here where you can kind of just hang out and use the tanks and just kind of hang out, below the enemies and just take them out as they pass by. And you got several lives to take them all out. It's really not too bad. I got sloppy here, but this stage really shouldn't be too difficult. The small power-up is really good. It makes your tank small, as you see here, but it also makes your tank a lot faster, and the fire rate increases. So it's quite a good power-up. It's one of the better ones. See how fast I'm able to run around here and take these guys out now with this. It also makes you small, which, as I said, but it makes you a smaller target. So, that can kind of help. But mainly, I like the speed and the increased fire rate. But that stage is not too bad. Now, of course, sometimes your stage completions are going to rely on getting the right power-ups at the right times, because sometimes you won't get certain pickups. So sometimes that can save your ass, as you'll see in round 21, where certain power-ups really saved me, because I barely beat that stage. Very hard stage. So I think we got another boss here. Now we got multiple boss vehicles on a track here, but I think I pull more bullshit with safe spots, or fairly safe spots, because with some of them, I'll trade bullets and be able to block their bullets by shooting the bullet as well. But I don't know if I found the safe spot on this one. We'll see, I guess. But some of them were safe enough, as you see, because as long as you can clear those fucking things out. But I usually found safe spots on most of the bosses that I can remember. At least pretty safe spots. For the final boss, I found a safe method where it uses safe spots, but I actually gradually inch down after cutting out a hole in the wall. So I'm going to explain that better for the final stage. But I had to modify that strat because, the people that in the videos, when I check videos on the game, people were all powered up and shit, or they were cheating. So I had to figure out how to do it with just a base gun. There are no power-ups in the final boss stage at all. The game just says, fuck you. But I think it's not going to be too bad with the strategy that I show. But before I put this strategy up, there wasn't really anything online that showed how to do it with the pea shooter. So I think this will be useful if anybody plays this fucking game. But yeah, you can try to utilize those semi-safe spots to take, do some hit and run with the bosses and take them out that way. But the enemies are pretty aggressive here, so I would probably recommend not trying to take out the bosses first thing. Maybe try to take out one of them, but then focus on clearing out all the enemies first. And when all the enemies are cleared out, then you can take your time on the bosses. Because after a certain point, no more enemies will come out. There's always a limited number of enemies in each stage. So use that to your strategy. You know, if you're having trouble, maybe clear out all the enemies first and then deal with the bosses at the end. You always got a few ways you can approach the stages most of the time. So this stage I don't think is too tricky because there's a lot of these narrow passages that the enemies have to pass through. So of course you can use that as a choke point, you know, and take them out when they try to pass by. The enemies aren't particularly smart. It's just that there's a lot of them, and it's very dangerous if you get in front of them. They can take you out very quickly. So, but after a while, you get used to kind of tearing through them quickly and eliminating them, and just driving through them. Kind of, you know, once you understand their movement patterns, you get better at that. It does show how many stages are left on this map. I think, like I said, I think it's around 36 or 37. The Jeeps are fast, but they're not really super dangerous because they're usually easy enough to take out. But sometimes they get a lot of laps in and they drop a lot of bombs on your base if you don't take them out fast enough. So that's really where they start to annoy me at times. They're not much of a danger to you, but because you can drive over the dynamite as long as it hasn't been sitting there for too long. You can just drive right over it, but you don't want to drive over the dynamite while it's about to explode. So you gotta kind of be mindful of when the dynamite was placed down if you're gonna play aggressively and drive through the dynamites. But it's another thing you will get used to doing on some of the harder stages. So now we got these little big boys coming out to play. So really, they're nothing too dangerous at this point because, you know, we dealt with a whole swarm of them on that one stage where it was like all little, almost like mini bosses, you know, but not really. But they are kind of like little mini bosses because, I mean, they take more hits than the other enemies. And, you know, they're bigger, I guess, but they're not too hard to deal with once you got the strat down of killing them from the side or the back. It's not like they're super fast or anything, but you don't want to be directly in front of them. And they can destroy your base pretty quick once they get in that bottom level down there. So when you see these guys getting down towards the bottom, you know, it's time to fry those motherfuckers, man. Don't let them hang out there too long. They're pretty stupid, though, like I said. You see, they'll just fucking leave. They go in these fucking weird routes. So it's pretty predictable after a while. You know, you'll get down where the AI is pretty predictable. You want to be really careful getting in front of these multi-launchers. They're really dangerous because they'll take out your base fast. So don't let them attack your base. But they're really dangerous because they shoot a whole barrage of bullets. They're the only enemies that shoot out a big barrage of bullets. So if you're trying to, like, block it with your regular fire, they'll probably shoot right through it. So try not to get in front of them when they stop. They'll stop for a brief moment before they fire. So you'll be able to recognize that pattern, but just don't be in front of them when they do that. Try to hit them from the side or the back. Again, we have a lot of choke points here, so this shouldn't be too bad. Get an airstrike this time, but the power-ups, generally, they don't seem to be consistent. It seems to be randomized. So, you know, there's a good chance you're not going to get the airstrike. But you shouldn't need it for this stage. I don't remember this stage being too aggressive. You know, then again, I don't remember a lot of stage specifics, even though I just beat this shit. But it was over the course of a few days, so. I remember the main stages that gave me trouble, you know, the final stage and stage 21. But yeah, the main priority in this game is always going to be taking out the guys that are swarming around your base. So once you've let them circle around your base and fuck around down there, that's when you want to start taking them out. Because, you know, once they start fucking around down there, they're probably going to take out your base fairly quickly depending on the enemy types. Especially if you got multiple enemies all going towards your base. You know, eventually they're going to break through. So you do want to clear them out when they start fucking around down at the bottom. I do, like I said, I got kind of used to the game where I will fuck around and do other shit and let the enemies kind of hang out near my base for a little while. But I try not to do it for too long because it gets dangerous. You know, your base can easily be taken out while they're lingering down there. But when I'm dealing with other shit, like trying to take out a boss, and I'll go deal with some of the enemies later if I don't think they're causing too much of a problem. The game does kind of give you a warning when a wall to your base has been destroyed. It says warning, which means pretty much one more hit on that exposed wall where the wall is removed will end the game. You know, you'll have to continue from the beginning of the stage. This is a really good power-up. This is like these really powerful shots and fast. and it can kill the boss fast. And it'll pretty much kill anything in like a single hit, pretty much. Really powerful shots. It won't kill the boss in a single hit, but I mean it will. You see how fast it took those turrets out. So if you get this power up, kill that shit, man. Just be aggressive and just start killing the boss. Because then if you die while trying to kill the boss, at least you took out most of the turrets on the boss, and then you can kill the rest of the enemies, finish off the boss a little later if you need to. So there's always a few ways you can go about it. Now for stage 21, I don't even know what my strategy is going to be as far as what I'm going to advise on that. I got to kind of watch it again and give some hints of how I approached it, because I didn't really, when I beat it, I didn't feel like I had a great strategy. I just finally fucking broke through, But by no means am I a master of that stage. I can't play it back to back and beat it multiple times in a row or anything. I mean, it might take me a long time to beat it again, This stage is actually kind of tricky. I remember this one took me a few attempts. It can be kind of, it can be a little difficult because the enemies do circle around this little fucking Pac-Man thing a lot. So the main thing, you just want to clear those fuckers out when they're down at the bottom. Don't let them hang around there too long. And if you're lucky, you'll get some decent power-ups. The shield is one of the better ones because it'll let you take a few hits. And when you have the shield, you can actually play super aggressively and you can tank some of the hits if you need to clear shit out. Like that's what I do with the shield a lot of times. I'll just tank a few hits and just fucking blow shit up just to get it out of there. So use the shield to your advantage. You can probably take at least 3 hits with it. So it is a good way to clear shit out. Because you don't always have the luxury to try to take things out really slowly. Sometimes you really got to get shit out of there and clear it out around the base, because they'll just take out the base. So now I got this double shot, which is really good. As you can see, I'm mostly hanging out at the bottom. I'm using it as a choke point because I know the guy's got to come down here. So again, I'm trying to route them to me, But you got to be careful. You see, they're almost taking out my base. It's getting pretty nasty now. So this is, like I said, a pretty tough stage. So you got to stay on top of it. You see, I'm really close to losing right now with those guys firing down on the base. But I was able to do it, and then this is the last guy. Once you're down to the last guy, just be patient. Because there is no timer. So don't rush in to try to, the last thing you want to do is rush in to take the last guy out and get shot and lose your last life. And I'm sure I've done that before. So you just want to play carefully when you're down to like the last 2 or 3 enemies. Just try to take them out real carefully. Wait a long-ass time if you have to. Let them come to you. Eventually they'll probably make their way to you. And if they go through one of your choke points, that's like a trap. So you can set up these little trap points and just kill them as they pass through. And it's a lot easier than trying to take them on head-on and gun at them, directly in range of their shots. Which I recommend never trying to really do unless you're confident that you can get in there fast, take the shot, and move to the other side immediately. I will do it, but it's like I try to minimize that because it's dangerous. Your tank is not too apt at dodging. It's pretty damn slow. So that's part of the strategy of this game, the way it's designed. It's a really, really good design feature, but it means you have to play it a certain way. You can't really speed through and move super fast. It's not like Gunsmoke for arcade where you have to move lightning fast and dodge all these crazy bullet patterns. It's more about getting used to the enemy movement and the enemy AI, you know what I mean, and being able to exploit it by killing the enemy from side shots and safe spots, choke points. And you're going to use all those strategies. You're going to mix and match all those strats you learn on all the different stages. But you're going to be utilizing a lot of the same strategies again and again. And you're also just going to get good at being kind of twitchy with the tank after a while, to where you can actually move pretty fast with it, and because you know it's coming. So you'll be able to move pretty aggressively and do some pretty crazy driving to maneuver around the enemies and take them out. I mean, there's times when I just drive up in the map where all the enemies are and I just run through them all, gun them all down, because I have a pretty good idea of how I can move through and take shit out. So I think that'll also come with But if your playstyle is less aggressive, you do have other options. You don't have to try to be super aggressive. You can mix and match aggressive play with more tactical, slower play, choke points and stuff like that. And a lot of times, you can pull a lot of bullshit where you can set up the enemies in your favor, you know what I mean, to come to you. So there is a lot of ways to approach some of the stages. So basically you can use, what you see in my playstyle, you can kind of just mix it up and do different things, but you can get some ideas for what you might want to utilize. At the very least, you can see that these arcade games, are beatable without having any starting power-ups, because you just don't see that online. And I had a big problem with that when I was trying to beat these games, obviously. I always wanted to see, let me see some good fucking footage to see what I'm doing wrong. But a lot of times I just had to figure it out myself, even though I do use other videos online as a tool. I even use my own videos and tutorials as a tool to beat games later, games that I've already beat, because I beat a lot of ports of games. So a lot of them are identical ports on different consoles and shit. So I do utilize that as a tool. But, when you're beating a lot of arcade games, you're not going to have a lot of resources with that. So you're gonna have to be able to come up with your own strats, because a lot of them, it's not shown really online how to beat these things without the starting power-ups. So that is part of beating a lot of these arcade games. But I mean, hopefully my tutorials have filled in some of those gaps, because I have made a good amount of tutorials on arcade games and other games. So now we have 3 of these fucking bosses, but the strategy remains pretty much the same. But you may want to clear out these tanks just because they are a fucking nuisance when it comes to your base. They won't bother you that much because you can gun them down if they get in your way, but they will bother your base, so that can be a problem. I see these guys are clustered in the bottom left, so I took my chance there to get some shots on the boss. And that semi-safe spot you saw me utilizing, it's a pretty safe spot to hang out and shoot the boss. So check that positioning and just mimic that. But at the same time, just be wary of all these enemies. If they get near the base, take them out. You see, the way I was playing this time was a lot more strategic. It was a mix of, twitchy gameplay and changing what I was doing pretty frequently. I was fighting the boss sometimes, but if I saw too much action at the bottom, then I would get engaged in the action down there and clear out all those enemies. But I saw that those enemies were clustered pretty good in that left fucking corner. So, when you see the enemies getting jammed up like that, take the chance. But yeah, so this is round 21, the toughest stage in the game. That took me 2 hours and 9 minutes. So here we see I'm being aggressive in the upper left corner here and taking out spawns. So you'll see I'm already playing quite a bit more aggressively from the last time you saw me playing. That's because, there was 2 hours of failed attempts, so I did get better at the game in that time. I didn't have too much trouble until this stage. So this is where my skills improve. But yeah, so you want to maybe clear out that upper left if you can, and then kind of come down here and take out some of these guys. But I don't have a perfect strat for this, you know what I mean? You can try to follow the way I did it here, but I don't think that's necessarily going to give you the results. But this was what I was doing after many times playing and playing. I came up with this particular order to do things. I would clear out the upper left area and then come down here and just hang out on this choke point. I'm also trying not to destroy my own walls down here because I need them for defense for my base. So you see I didn't destroy those walls. I purposely didn't shoot at some of the walls. Now this time I cleared out this little space because I wanted to take out that asshole. But now I need to be aggressive because the armored tanks come out. Once these armored units come out, you really need to be aggressive. Look how fast they're destroying my base. And now I really got to fucking hurry to take these guys out. And this is the hardest part of round 21. When all the armored tanks come out, once this armored fleet comes out, it's pretty fucking brutal. I mean, there's really no way to sugarcoat it or make it sound easy. I don't have an easy strat for this. It's very hard. I mean, if you can't tell, it's fucking tough. That's all I can say. It could have taken me several more hours and I wouldn't have been surprised. And, I'm usually pretty quick at beating hard parts, relatively quick, compared to how long stuff, used to take me in the past. But, this still took me over 2 hours. And for me to take 2 hours on a part like that's usually a pretty fucking hard part. So that was fucking hard. You see, I got some perfect power-ups at the end, like that X, which let me shoot in 4 directions, let me clear out a bunch of shit. But yeah, I don't have a really consistent strat or anything for round 21. I can just tell you that if you're struggling with it, don't feel too bad because it was the hardest stage in the game by far. If you can beat round 21, you'll beat the game, especially with my final boss strat. It's very easy, my final boss strat that I found. It's not hard to do. So it doesn't really take much skill at all to pull off. But round 21 is going to take a lot of fucking skill, and you're really going to have to be pretty good at the game to even beat that stage. I don't have any easy shortcuts for that stage or any great exploits or anything. You just got to kind of get good at the game and managing all the different enemy types. And moving, because if I couldn't take out the armored tanks quick enough, they would just blow up my base really fast. And I had to get lucky with the power-up drops. Unfortunately, I never got like an airstrike fucking power-up during the metal tank phase, the armored tank phase, really. Where they're all out like that. That would have been super helpful. I have gotten it like when I didn't really need it on the easier phases. But, yeah, so it was just a fucking grind. But I did cruise through the next few stages after beating that stage because they were so much easier. I might have even beat this stage on the first time after beating that previous stage, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check the footage again. Like I said, the way this is edited, it's not showing exactly where I failed, but I could probably analyze it and figure it out. But I know I cruised through a few of the stages after that stage 21. There were still some tricky stages, but nothing like that. But all I can say is you're trying to protect your base and hold out to that armored tank phase, and then you really have to take out those armored tanks really fast because they really start to like cluster up by the base and destroy the base fast. And it's tough because each one takes multiple shots each to destroy. So when you have 10 of them swarming the base, it gets very difficult. It seems like they keep spawning in too, but they do end eventually. But I can only say that that's just like a really hard fucking stage, and you want to prioritize those tanks when they start coming out, the metal ones, the armored ones. But beyond that, I would say just hope you're getting some good power-ups and shit. And you're probably going to have to practice a lot to get in a rhythm with that stage as well. But, don't be too discouraged if that stage takes you a few hours, because it's easy to spend a few hours on that stage. But once you get past that, though, there's not going to be anything as hard as that again. So that's really all I got to worry about. So I think this boss might have been kind of tricky. If I'm thinking of the right one, I gotta watch it a little bit more. But I'm not sure if this is the one where a lot of enemies come out. This might be the easy one because there were some easy stages after 21. There was quite a few easy stages actually. Maybe this one's not too bad. This might be one of the really easy ones where I just hang out in a safe spot. I believe there is one variation of this particular boss a little bit later, maybe, where there's a lot of enemies out and it's actually pretty tough. It's one of the tougher little boss stages, but yeah, I don't think this is it. See, I found a really nice safe spot here. And this is the kind of shit I find in a lot of games. I find a lot of exploits for, towards the AI, because I play I beat a shitload of, I pretty much cleared out most of the fighting games that are out there, at least the main ones, and a lot of obscure ones for very, and multiple ports of them, including the SNK fighting games with really cheap fucking last bosses and all that shit. So, and a lot of shooters, old shooters, arcade games and shit like that. And a lot of times, because of that, I use save states to practice a lot of games as well. So I'm just really used to finding and exploiting AI in a lot of these old games. And, even new games. But I do it, it's something I do a lot. So I'm always looking for those safe spots and trying to find bullshit that I can pull. And I found, safe spots on most of these bosses. They may have not been 100% safe, all of them, but they were, pretty damn reliable. So yeah, the enemies do start to swarm out there towards the end. So be wary of that, but I think it's mostly jeeps, which are not much of a threat. They are dangerous if you ignore them for too long, because they'll blow up the base, but they're not much of a threat to you, anyway. And they don't take out the base super fast, usually like the tanks can. So now we have another stage with some explosives you can use to clear out some clusters of enemies if you want. There's not going to be too many stages that put up a hell of a lot of resistance compared to what we've dealt with, but there's still some tricky stages. But again, I got this little power up here, but I'm mostly just hanging out on the bottom half of the screen. I may be aggressive and start chasing guys when I feel confident, but I could have done pretty much all that from the bottom of the screen for this stage. So, like I said, if you're having trouble, just use those choke points and just hang out at the bottom and just snipe them when they try to pass through. Most enemies only take one shot to kill, even with your pea shooter. A few take multiple shots, but you can usually get 2 shots in pretty fast and take out a lot of enemies. The problem is when you got tons of armored enemies swarming pretty, fairly quickly. I mean, they don't move fast, but it's kind of quick considering there's like 10 of them, and you don't really have the time to take them all out. So your base can get overwhelmed and destroyed pretty quick. The biggest issue for that was on stage 21, though. That was where it was really fucking hard. But yeah, you can let some of these guys go into some of these cul-de-sacs here where they kind of get stuck, and you can, as they're trying to pass through again, you can snipe them out. You really don't have to go crazy chasing everyone. A lot of them will loop around into your path of fire, your line of fire. So you can kind of just hang out in these little, areas here and just wait. If this game had a strict timer on the stages, it would definitely be a lot harder. But there is no timer. The only real timer is if enemies are attacking your base, then you have to do something. But yeah, this stage really isn't too bad. I could see it being a little challenging, but as long as you're not really chasing everything down aggressively, you can kind of just hang out, like I said, wait for a lot of these enemies. And when they get around your base, don't let them hang out at your base. That's really about it. Those large enemies are pretty damn easy. I mean, most of the time you can shoot them from the side or the back. I mean, they take a lot of hits, but they don't take that many. You also want to take out those big things that were moving in the beginning of the stage because they'll move down and destroy your base. I usually take them out immediately. Whenever they appear in a stage, you'll see me. I just shoot them from the sides because they can't hit you from the sides, really. So I just take them out from the sides, those big metal barriers. But that's about it. I don't remember this stage being too difficult. Little freeze timer always helps to take out a few enemies. It's mostly useful on bosses, most of the time, but it's not bad to get. All the power-ups are on a temporary timer, though, so, any bullet power-ups or anything you get is going to run out. So you want to try to take that time to do as much damage as you can with your powered-up weapons. Take out as many enemies as you can. Unless you have a safe strat or something where you can kind of just hang out, like a safe spot on a boss. But when I do get the powered-up shots, I try to take the bosses out faster usually. But a lot of times that will involve using the safe spots as well, so it doesn't always change the strat a huge amount. So yeah, just kind of, be patient when you got a few enemies left, as I said. Don't rush into them. So now we're getting close to the end of the game. So there might be another safe spot here, or semi-safe spot. I don't know if I can call all those complete safe spots, but they're good enough for my purposes of beating the fucking game. So, I was happy with it. That's usually my main objective. I just fucking beat games. I like beating shit. Easy shit, difficult, whatever. I just like fucking killing shit. I like filling out that list. So my objectives are pretty fucking simple when I'm playing a game. I will do additional challenges occasionally, but my form of a challenge is usually not doing a dedicated challenge run like a 1cc, 1 credit run or no death run or anything. What I usually do, I'll just play a really hard fucking game, shit like that. Or I'll play an extreme mode in a game, like the hardest mode. I kind of like straightforward challenges where the game has the difficulty mode, built into it, or the game is just super fucking hard. I prefer that kind of thing. But I definitely think it's 1cc and no death runs are really fucking nice too. But I've only done a few of those intentionally. I do have quite a few 1cc and no death runs, but it was as a result of just over practicing a game, or the game was just too easy, So, I mean, it happens, but, I don't do too many of them intentionally. But the hardest 1cc run I did was the expert mode playthrough of Double Dragon Advance on 1cc, which I think that took around 35 hours for me to break through with the 1cc. So that That was really fucking hard, but that was cool. But I mean, I love that game, so I was willing to do it. But I'm not really, I don't do a lot of speed runs. I've done a few casual speed runs, and it's definitely fun. You know, I do like the variety, but I'm more of a volume killer, which I don't see people doing that too much online, but that's my thing. I like to fucking kill a high volume of games, like over 400 a year usually, the last few years anyway. I've amassed about 2,000 playthroughs or more on the channel already since, I think, 2017 when I got recording capability. So it's been a high volume, you know, fucking slaughter fest since then. Before that, I had about 1,000 kills just from playing games, you know, since the fucking 80s and shit when I started. But I wasn't really going particularly just for like a high volume. I was just playing a lot of shit, just trying to beat games. But, you know, weightlifting was like a main focus for a long fucking time. So I wasn't putting tons of hours always into games. And I was playing a lot of online gaming during the Halo and Gears of War period. I also had a period with Ninja Gaiden Black where I spent a very long time on Ninja Gaiden Black, playing for over 40 million points in mission mode, which was like over 800 hours on that. So, I mean, there was times when I was dedicated, you know, spending a lot of time on a single game. I was playing a lot of online multiplayer, you know. So, lately, since 2017, main focus has really been volume killing, you know. Just meeting a quota of at least 25 kills a month. But a lot of times I go much higher. Last month was 121 kills. I was purposely doing a high volume month just to do it because I dumped a bunch of new ROMs on the emulation PC, you know, Switch, and just various new consoles like Xbox 360. So I wanted to clear out some of those. There's a lot of easy, low-hanging fruits, easy victims for the list. So this stage may be a little bit tricky. I haven't been saying much about the stages because, like I said, after beating stage 21, I don't think anyone's going to have too much trouble with these stages. I mean, they're a little tricky, but I don't see these being, like, that unique, you know? It's kind of like same shit, different fucking toilet by this point. But the final boss is going to be interesting. But the good news is that I don't think you're going to have any trouble on the final boss once you see my video, so you should have this shit. You know, my only warning would be, like, just expect round 21 to be pretty fucking brutal. You know, I don't think there's any way around that. You got to just get good at the game and get lucky on that stage, I think. So, you know, expect that when you know, if you're going into this game fresh, just expect stage 21 to be the real sticking point. And the final boss probably would be, if I wanted to come up with a strat, I could have seen that taking me many, many hours trying to do hit and run tactics on that fucking boss. But luckily, I was able to modify a strat that I found. You know, I saw a video of somebody else playing with a powered up weapon, so I couldn't copy their strat. I had to modify it. But I did use the part of the strat where they dug into the wall to make a kind of like a little trench to fire from. But I modified it so that I kind of inched down the trench after a certain point. So I'm going to explain that. I definitely had to modify it, but it did end up working. I wouldn't have been able, like I said, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that strat in its entirety, like where I just sit there in the semi-safe spot. It's only safe for a certain amount of time, but I couldn't sit there and do that because I didn't have the firepower. I couldn't damage shit fast enough, you know. So I had to come up with a strat where I was able to implement, you know, movement into it. And it did work. I almost did a no-death run on the boss, so it was a good strat. I would use it again if I was trying to actually, you know, beat that without dying. So I think this stage is actually worth commenting on. Now I have some shit to talk about. I think this is a pretty hard stage. So, you know, take out the enemies. If you get this ring shooting weapon, this is like one of the awesome weapon. So utilize that to mostly fire at the boss, but take occasional left and right shots at the enemies. And you see I'm in this little pivot point in the middle of this wall. You know, keep that position and just fire left and right and try to clear shit out that way. But mostly focus on firing straight up at the boss. And if you do that, then you'll only have to clean up a few enemies at the end and clean up a few turrets on the boss, and it shouldn't be too bad. But I think this took me quite a few tries, if I remember right. This was one of the harder stages. I mean, but when I say, you know, a few tries, even if it took 10 minutes, it's nothing like 2 hours or whatever that round 21 took, you know. But yeah, that's it. It is a little tricky, though. Definitely not an easy stage. If you're having trouble, clear out all the enemies first and then focus on the boss. I don't know if there was any real good safe spots that I found for that one. I think that's what made it hard. But I do like to fire like straight up from the edges of those walls. And, you know, I'm usually a little bit below the wall, so it might block a little bit of the shot. But I don't think it's a completely safe spot, so it could be it can still be tough. But if you can find those power-ups where you can shoot through the wall and shit like that, that shit is great. Eventually, you probably get that if you play long enough. Just make sure you use it properly and take out the boss. This stage I remember being pretty easy. I think it only took a few tries. It can be a little tricky. I mean, they can take out your base fast when they start swarming down here, but I mean, you get good weapons and shit. It's a little tricky because, you know, half the screen is cut off, so it's a lot of enemies in a small area. So I guess it's a little tricky for that, but there's a lot of little pivot points and stuff. You know, it is easy for your base to get shot up. So it's not the easiest stage, but it is a short stage, you know, because the enemies are all crammed into such a small area. So it's pretty short, and if you get good power-ups, you can kind of get lucky and get through it that way, too, if you're having trouble. I try to use those choke points mainly and take the guys out as they're coming down for that stage. So this stage, I'm going to have to see to remember exactly. Oh, yeah, this stage has these metal things. I think it has 4 of these metal wall enemies. So for these metal wall enemies, what I try to do is I usually approach them from the side and take them out. Right now I have this multi-directional shot, which I'm trying to utilize to clear out more of the tanks right now. Because like if you get that, try to take out the tanks first, because there's a lot of fucking tanks. And the tanks are like the biggest threat to your base usually. But I like to take out those metal walls from the sides, because it's safe to shoot them from the sides. But you know, I did a very sloppy run of this stage. I think I had all my lives present and I used them all pretty much, but I was able to scrape by. And then I'm just hanging out down here and trying to clear all these guys out from this little choke point. This is a good choke point only because these walls are metal, so the enemies can't break those walls. So you can really just wait here. But you may have to come down. If they're getting, if they pass that choke point and you don't take them out, you may have to actually go down there and do a little work yourself. But again, when there's only 2 enemies left, don't be in a rush to take them out, especially these guys are quick. So, let them come to you, let them pass by a wall or some shit and get shot. It's your best way of dealing with them, because if you try to drive around and shoot at them, it is dangerous. Your tank does turn slow and shit, so, better to play it safe. Soon will be the final boss, but I think there's a few more stages. Maybe one more. I guess 36 stages for the game. So yeah, this stage, I think it is a little tricky. I don't remember this being an easy stage. I remember this stage being kind of tricky. You may want to get that thing that heals the base. I think I was able to get it. And that heals the base and protects it for a few seconds. So that's a really good thing to get if you can get it in this stage. That can make the stage a lot easier if you find that. Because these guys, can be aggressive towards the base. And I think there's going to be some hard waves that come out near the end, if I remember right. Yeah, see, now these bigger enemies are coming out, which is hard when it's mixed with all the other enemies, the armored tanks and other shit. It's mainly difficult for the sake of your base. It's not so much difficult to survive as far as your tank goes, but protecting the base can be a bitch in this game. That's the main challenge most of the time. But it really, like I said, it's a challenging stage, but it didn't take me too long. So now we're going to be approaching the final boss, so I'll try to break that down. So here's my strat for the final boss. Cut a hole right in the middle here. If you have a turbo controller, it makes it a lot easier to rapid fire through the wall like that, but I don't think you need it. But yeah, so, get in there, and don't go all the way to the top. Leave a little bit of a gap so there's some wall above you on the sides. And the strategy here is, if you notice on the top left and top right of your tank is a block, a brick, right? When that brick gets destroyed, move down. Retreat down when one of those bricks gets destroyed. See how that brick got destroyed? I moved down, and now I'm continuing the fire again from this spot. Now watch. See, the brick is going to get destroyed again, I think, on the left side. See? Now I move down again. And that's the strat. And if it happens on the right side, you should move down as well, and that was my mistake. I think I got a little greedy, and I ended up losing a life on this. But you could do this with no deaths if you played a little bit more careful than what I did here. This was my first and only time beating the boss, so, you know, whatever gets through is what gets through in the footage. You know, I did not go back and refine anything for this tutorial. I have done it for some. But this is just a tutorial based on what I actually did, so it's exactly how I succeeded on each part. And this was my first time really executing this strat and you know, utilizing it for this, you know, particular part anyway. But it does utilize the safe spot tech. It's just that the safe spot keeps moving, you know what I mean, as the bricks break apart. So what I'm doing, I'm gradually inching down as those left and right upper bricks break apart. I'm readjusting my position each time and then firing straight up. So that's all you got to do. You don't need any power-ups for that. I had no base power-ups. I was in there completely fucking naked, just like we did back in the fucking 70s, you know? So, I mean, totally fucking naked. And, you know, it works. You can beat the final boss, which is probably one of the hardest parts. But with that strat, it's dead easy. The only problem you're going to have with my tutorial, I think, is going to be round 21. You're going to have to just develop the skill and just get good at the game. But you can, you know, at least eyeball what was going on there and try to get an idea of what to expect. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching. I'll have a review up soon as well.